The smell of lukewarm instant coffee and week-old microwave popcorn permeated the air of the cramped office at the Quirky Quip, an online magazine dedicated to reviews of novelty kitchen gadgets. Alara Finch, a woman whose bank account balance was as predictable as her preference for vintage sweaters, was currently wrestling with a stand mixer that promised to whip up dreams but mostly just spat batter onto her ceiling. Her loyalty wasn't to her job, but to the health insurance it provided for her ailing yet impossibly cheerful grandmother. Suddenly, a shadow fell across her workspace, blocking the weak fluorescent light. Is this some kind of avant-garde performance art, or are you actually attempting to destroy company property? Alara slowly lowered the sticky mixer attachment. Towering over her was Jasper Thorne, a man whose face was usually reserved for the cover of Forbes or the society pages. He was notorious for his ruthless business acumen and his perpetually unimpressed expression. His suit probably cost more than her entire life savings. Who are you, and why are you inspecting my artisanal destruction? If you're a new security guard, you're overdressed. Jasper pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture that spoke volumes about his current suffering. I am Jasper Thorne, and as of 2 hours ago, I own this publication. And that thing, he gestured to the mixer, is currently splattering proprietary information onto the wall. Alara's jaw dropped. The Quirky Quip had been bought out? By him? The man who once tried to market a $5,000 diamond-encrusted toothpick holder? Oh, great. The corporate vampire has found our neck of the woods. What are you going to do? Turn our reviews into a subsidiary of Thorne Luxury Goods? We review things with price tags lower than your morning espresso shot, Mr. Thorne. Jasper's lip curled into a sneer that looked remarkably like a suppressed cough. In the contrary, Ms. Finch, I bought this dumpster fire of an enterprise for its unique appeal, which apparently translates to one very unkempt employee fighting small appliances. Clean up that mess. You have an hour. And for the record, my espresso costs $150, but it's imported from a private volcano plantation. The sheer pretentiousness of his statement made Alara want to review his life as utterly impractical. This was going to be a disaster. The disaster officially began the next morning. Jasper Thorne had decided his first order of business was to conduct an immersive experience by reviewing a product himself. He chose a 1999 self-stirring travel mug. The problem was he couldn't figure out how to open the battery compartment and was too arrogant to read the instructions, which Alara had helpfully placed directly under his nose. This is clearly defective, he declared, shaking the mug with the intensity of a maraca player having a seizure. The power supply is inaccessible. I suspect corporate sabotage. Alara, sipping her real coffee, watched him with a delighted smirk. Or, Mr. Thorne, you could lift the rubber tab marked Battery Access. It's a common feature on products designed for people who can operate a doorknob without an instruction manual. He glared at her, his dark eyes flashing. He lifted the tab. Sure enough, there was the compartment. This design is aesthetically lacking and non-intuitive. A quality product should not require the user to engage in manual labor. Right, because your life is so terribly strenuous. She pushed a stack of cheap plastic spatulas onto his pristine desk. Here's your next assignment, the ergonomic edge spatula. Focus on its flexible head and heat resistance, and try not to accidentally purchase the factory that makes it. Jasper looked at the spatulas as if they were evidence in a murder investigation. I don't cook. I have a team of highly paid professionals for that. And what exactly is an ergonomic edge? Alara leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though they were the only two in the room. It means it won't give you a hand cramp while you're flipping your artisanally toasted microgreens, you pampered menace. The sheer absurdity of their clash, the billionaire baffled by a spatula, the middle-class woman teaching him, was a tiny, hilarious victory for Alara. She realized with a shock that she was starting to enjoy hating him. The reviews were getting weirder. Jasper, determined to prove he could master the middle-class aesthetic, decided to review a $15 as-seen-on-TV appliance, the Easy Peasy Egg Scrambler, a device that promised to scramble an egg inside its shell. The demonstration, filmed in the magazine's tiny, makeshift studio, was a masterpiece of unintentional comedy. Jasper, dressed in an immaculate suit, but wearing a protective, ill-fitting plastic apron Alara had found, tried to follow the instructions. His frustration mounted as he struggled with the cheap plastic components. "This mechanism," he stated, trying to screw the egg holder together, "is an affront to engineering. The tolerances are appalling." Alara was behind the camera, trying desperately not to shake it with her laughter. "It's $15, Jasper. It's meant to be simple. Just pull the cord. Don't try to calculate the tensile strength of the nylon." He pulled the cord. Too hard. The egg, still in its shell, shot out of the scrambler, hit the far wall with a messy splat, and then slowly oozed down the white paint. There was a moment of stunned silence. Jasper slowly turned, a dollop of raw egg yolk clinging precariously to his cheekbone. His eyes were wide with a mix of fury and utter disbelief. I have created a proprietary omelet abstract expressionist mural." Alara finally lost it. She dissolved into a fit of hysterical laughter, doubling over until tears streamed down her face. Her laughter was loud, genuine, and completely unprofessional. She expected him to fire her on the spot. Instead, a strange thing happened. A slight twitch appeared at the corner of Jasper's mouth, then another. He looked at the mess, then at her, and finally a deep, rumbling sound escaped him, a sound that was unmistakably a genuine laugh, the kind that had been suppressed by decades of corporate meetings. It was a terrible, rusty sound, but it was real. In that eggy, humiliating moment, they saw something in each other that was human, and the hate felt slightly less potent. The incident of the egg scrambler went viral. Not the review itself, but a candid shot Alara had taken of Jasper, raw egg on his cheek, apron crooked, eyes looking utterly bewildered, titled "Billionaire Battles Breakfast." The irony was delicious, and traffic to the quirky quip exploded. Jasper, ever the businessman, recognized a good, if humiliating, opportunity. "Miss Finch," he announced, walking into her office where she was now reviewing a self-basting turkey baster, "our viewership has increased by 400%. Your mockery, while personally offensive, is demonstrably profitable. So my job is to make the richest man in the world look like an incompetent muppet?" Alara asked, trying to keep a straight face while looking at the massive hand-stitched silk handkerchief he was using to dust off his keyboard. "Exactly," he said, adjusting his tie. "It's a bizarre loyalty I now owe to the market. You must continue your scathing, lowbrow commentary. I've even designed a segment for you. Alara's Corner. Things that baffle billionaires." Alara stared at him. The man was a monster, but he was a funny monster, in a completely unintentional way. "You're actually leaning into this?" "I am leveraging my brand to capitalize on my public vulnerability," he replied, using language that stripped all humor from the situation. He sat down opposite her, but instead of talking business, he suddenly looked uncomfortable. "My grandmother, she watches the news. She called me, said I was finally doing something with common people. She was very loyal to her old community." It was a small, fragile opening, a glimpse beneath the titanium armor. "My grandmother is the reason I can tolerate the smell of instant coffee. She needs the insurance. She's the most loyal person I know." For a fleeting second, the business tycoon was gone, replaced by a man who understood family obligation. The silence was not hostile, but almost companionable. It was quickly broken when Jasper picked up the baster she was reviewing. "Is this for injecting high-grade oil into jet engines?" he asked seriously. Alara sighed. The idiot was back. Their forced collaboration evolved into a strange, competitive ritual. Alara would select the cheapest, most baffling gadget, a motorized chip dip dispenser, a miniature indoor s'mores maker, and Jasper would try to review it using his hyper-analytical luxury goods mindset. The resulting video footage was gold. One afternoon, while trying to assemble a foldable plastic picnic table, Jasper accidentally locked himself into the sitting position. The mechanism was surprisingly robust. Finch, the structural integrity of this low-density polyethylene is superior to what I anticipated, he announced, stuck with his legs bent. However, I appear to be immovably secured. Alara found him 5 minutes later, still wedged in the tiny chair, looking utterly ridiculous and completely helpless. She couldn't stop herself from taking a picture. The review's going to be great. Title: The Billionaire Trap, a study in portability and humiliation. It's not funny, Alara, he said, though his voice lacked its usual sharp edge. The annual industry mixer was mandatory. It was a glittering, absurd affair held in a penthouse overlooking the city. Ilara, dressed in the one decent dress she owned, a carefully preserved vintage piece, felt profoundly out of place. Jasper Thorne, looking like he'd stepped off a yacht and onto the cover of GQ, was busy schmoozing with fellow tycoons. Suddenly, a condescending acquaintance from a rival publication cornered Ilara. "Still revealing singing bottle openers, Ilara? Tisk, tisk. I heard Thorne only bought your little rag for the tax write-off. Poor dear." Ilara was preparing a sharp, well-aimed retort when Jasper appeared, smoothly slipping an arm around her waist. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice dropping to a low, possessive register that sent a shiver down Ilara's spine. "Allow me to introduce the new editor-in-chief of the Quirky Quip, Ilara Finch. Her sharp wit and uncompromising editorial standards are what's driving my latest billion-dollar valuation. We are currently planning a series of acquisitions in the luxury lifestyle market inspired entirely by her vision." Ilara's eyes widened. Editor-in-chief? Acquisitions? He was lying spectacularly, but the loyalty in his defense was real, and it was breathtaking. The rival editor stammered an apology and retreated. As soon as they were alone, Ilara pulled away, her heart hammering. "Editor-in-chief? Jasper, what was that?" He looked down at her, his expression unreadable. "It was damage control. I will not have my staff, my partner, insulted by those sycophants." He paused, adjusting the grip on a champagne flute he wasn't drinking. "And perhaps it wasn't entirely a lie. You are the only person who has ever managed to inject actual joy into my work, Ilara, and you deserve to be the boss." Ilara didn't know how to respond to such genuine, if awkwardly expressed, admiration. "You're still an infuriating, over-caffeinated tyrant," she said, trying to regain some footing. "And you are still a ridiculously charming, under-caffeinated anarchist," he countered, with a familiar glint of challenge in his eye. "But I find that I am remarkably loyal to your brand of chaos." It was the closest to a compliment he had ever offered, and it felt dangerously like a confession. Ilara just shook her head, thoroughly amused. This was their life now. A constant, hilarious negotiation between the extreme poles of their existences. They were loyal to their own upbringings, but they were slowly building a bridge between them. Jasper was learning to appreciate the simple joy of a cheap beer and a truly terrible reality TV show. And Ilara was learning that beneath the layers of privilege, Jasper was just a man with a deep need for genuine connection and a surprisingly goofy sense of humor. He was a man who, when she was sick, sent his private chef to make her chicken soup, but only after spending an hour trying to order a can of soup from a normal grocery store, completely bewildered by the online ordering system. The final challenge to their relationship came in the form of Jasper's mother, the formidable Lady Beatrice Thorne. She invited Ilara to a formal luncheon at the Thorne estate, a place that made Buckingham Palace look quaint. Lady Beatrice was all ice and impeccable manners.
Jasper tells me you review plastic things, she said, raising an eyebrow that could cut glass. And you have influenced him to wear an apron on film. Elora decided honesty and humor were her best defense. Yes, Lady Thorne, I review plastic things. Last week it was a singing ice cream scoop, and yes, the apron was necessary after he projectile launched an egg at the wall. My loyalty is to the truth. And the truth is, your son is charmingly incompetent with small appliances. Lady Beatrice looked utterly shocked. Then a tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. Incompetent, you say? Well, that is a new adjective for him. You have spirit, Ilara, and you make him laugh. He hasn't truly laughed in years. I'm loyal to anyone who can manage that. Ilara was astonished. The humor had worked where wealth and status would have failed. Later that evening, Ilara and Jasper sat on the terrace, watching the city lights. You charmed my mother, Jasper said, shaking his head in disbelief. No one charms my mother. She's tried to set me up with 3 princesses and 2 oil heiresses. Well, I'm just a woman with a great job, a questionable sweater collection, and a loyalty to a good punchline. Ilara leaned her head on his shoulder. And I love you, Jasper, even if you don't know the difference between a spatula and a spoon. Jasper wrapped his arm around her. And I love you, Ilara, even if you think that instant coffee is an acceptable beverage. Now, what's your review of this moment? 5 stars, great setting, excellent company, and surprisingly comfortable cashmere. I recommend it highly. The unexpected love, born from professional hatred and sustained by ridiculous humor, was the best review either of them had ever written.